Hello readers, I'm Amy. Today I'm gonna go ahead and do a book review. By the way, got a new couch. This is, I think, gonna be my new filming setup. Anyways, today I want to do a book review. It's on the story of Jane, the legendary underground abortion service. This was written by Laura Kaplan. I believe it was published in 1995, and this is going to be a kind of review, but also just a discussion on uterus rights in general. I'm wanting to do some really basic walkthrough explanations on why I believe the things that I believe. So, story of Jane. Jane was an underground abortion service. It came to be in like the late 60s and finished up, I think, like 71 or 72. So with everything that's going on, it's like, we already fought for this. Women have already died over this issue. Uterus havers have already died over this issue. Why are we here again? Pretty good book. It's a nonfiction, of course. Not too dry. I think it can be a little bit on the drier side, but it also really walks through like the lives of the different women who were working for the service. It talks a little bit about the people who were getting abortions at the time and how they decided, like, this is going to be where we all meet, this is going to be where we drive to. It talked about how they got a hold of the doctors. You didn't want to talk to any one doctor like too much because you might stretch them a little thin or you might annoy them. You wanted to be really careful about like what doctors can we use in what situations and how do we keep them within our system without overwhelming them. And there was also this really interesting bit that it's talking about where you had one or two women in particular who were there for almost all of the abortions, and there was this one particular doctor who was making enough money from it that he would be with them, I think, 3 days a week to just do abortions for 3 straight days. And the women who were in on that actually used this opportunity to like ask him questions and learn the process, and he eventually let them start helping with abortions to the point where I think one or two of these women could actually do the abortions on their own without medical surveillance, and they did a really good job at it, and their statistics were checked, and their success rate and their infection rate was about the same as any professional hospital, which is really cool to see. And for them, it's like, we want these people to know that they have control over their own bodies. So they would bring them in for the abortion, and they would be like, let's talk about what's going to happen during the abortion. Like, they would do a 1-hour therapy session. The people would then go in for the abortion, and they would be like, I'm going to talk you through every single step of this. If you need me to pause, we're gonna pause. If you're ready for me to go, we're gonna go. And these people felt really empowered from that. It's like they got to take complete control of their own bodies, not only through having this health care, which was the abortion, but also through gaining the knowledge that they needed after the abortion. Like, here's everything you need to know about birth control. Here's what you need to know about family planning. Like, here's a phone number if you need it. Here's a phone number if you have questions. But really, a lot of this stuff comes back to basic sex education and examining class hierarchies and how that plays into a lot of it. So it was really a great nonfiction if you need a little bit of history on abortion and on this specific abortion service. I liked that we got to know the people who were involved in the service. And of course, the day that I finished reading this book was the day that I got on Twitter and saw that we are having this fight all over again. So if you don't already know, I am a child-free person. My partner and I have chosen not to have children ever. I don't typically like to talk about the reasons why, not only because they are very personal to us and our relationship and our situation, but also just because I shouldn't have to list all of the reasons why I don't want kids. Me not wanting kids should just be an acceptable answer. But unfortunately, it's not an acceptable answer. So I want to go ahead and walk everyone through. Just for the record, the rest of this video is not a review. The rest of this video is me talking about reasons people might not want kids. I'm not going to talk about religion in this video. I haven't thoroughly studied religion. I do not consider myself to be a religious person. So I'm not gonna discuss that. I wanna talk about the day-to-day life a little bit. So let's say someone gets pregnant and you think, oh, well, if they don't want the baby, they don't have to keep it. They'll just go through the pregnancy, they'll have the baby, they'll get it adopted. Okay, let's start there. I am adopted, for the record. I know my biological family and I know my family. If you ask me about my mom, I will say, well, my mom's the person who raised me. But regardless, pregnancy. Not everyone wants to go through a pregnancy. It's not just, oh, go ahead through the pregnancy and have the baby and then you don't have to take care of it. When you get pregnant, your body changes. You gain weight. Your hormones change. I know someone who faints throughout pregnancy. I know of people who've had ectopic pregnancies, which means that the fetus is formed outside of the womb. And when that happens, there is no way for the fetus to be expelled from the body in a safe way. There's just no way that a birth can happen, and there is no way that that fetus would survive that 9 months regardless. So in that case, it's better for both fetus and mom to go ahead and have the abortion. Gum care. I have this story of, I had been dating my partner for 2 months. That is, not that we weren't in a serious relationship, but like, it was 2 months. That's a really short period of time. And I went to get my dental cleaning. And I'm like, yeah, I have a partner, blah, blah, blah. And the dental assistant for the entire rest of my cleaning is talking to me about how important it is to have gum care during pregnancy. First off, that's a lot of pressure on my 2-month relationship. Secondly, that is none of your business and I did not ask about that. And thirdly, well, let's talk about gum care in pregnancy. Your gums start bleeding. Maybe your teeth have problems, more problems than they're already having just through day-to-day use. Uterus growing, that's going to be really uncomfortable. I know people who have pains that go through the anus and kind of into their spine. I have that and I've never even been pregnant. I have that whenever I experience my period. Really uncomfortable. Not something I want to go through. You're tired. Your feet are swelling. Other parts of your body are swelling. Your breasts are going to change. Bras are really, really expensive already, and if you have to keep buying a bra because your breast size keeps changing because you're pregnant, or you have to keep buying new clothes because your body is changing when you're pregnant, not everyone can afford that. Not everyone has the energy for that. How about we talk about finances during pregnancy? You have to see a doctor to keep up on your health and on the health of the fetus, which not only is a financial concern, but a time concern. If you're low on money and you have to live paycheck to paycheck, you're not necessarily going to have time to see a doctor every couple of weeks for that pregnancy. And that's not even considering the birth and the money that goes into birthing a child and the time that you spend in the hospital. It could be 1 day, it could be 2 hours, it could be a week. Maybe you're having trouble with bleeding during that pregnancy. Maybe you have to, or not pregnancy, during that birth, maybe you have to have an emergency cesarean, which is even more trauma on your body because now you have a scar going down your stomach. Maybe you have perineal tearing. Maybe they cut the perineum. Pregnancy and birth is not easy. It's this whole huge bodily process, and no one should be forced to go through all of that if they don't want to. I see pregnancy as almost a kind of trauma on the body, honestly, because of all of those changes that happen, and not everyone is able to keep up with those changes. If you have to go on bed rest during your pregnancy, that's even more money and time that you're losing that not everyone is able to have. And bring class and race into this, because race is a huge part of what class you end up in society. You're not going to have access to the same resources as everyone. So that's just pregnancy and birth. Then after birth, say you decide to have the child adopted. That again is a lot of paperwork and a lot of time and a lot of having the right resources, and being able to adopt someone is also a huge process. It takes at least at least a year and a half, if you're really lucky, to go from the start to the finish of the adoption process. And to put all of these hurdles in the way of adoption, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing. You're trying to make sure that the child is adopted into a good family, but then also you have the issue of anyone could really get pregnant and have a baby, whether or not they are financially, physically, mentally, and emotionally capable of doing so. For me, honestly, I deal with enough depression and anxiety that I think it would be a really poor life for a child to have, to be raised by me in my mental and emotional condition. I have a lot of physical health issues that would certainly genetically be passed on to a child, and I wouldn't want that child to have to go through that. And in this economy, I don't have the finances to be taking care of a baby. I don't make enough money. I don't have that kind of time because I need a lot of self-care time and a lot of me time and personal time to take care of my depression and anxiety. And the adoption process, like, that was not easy for my parents. And not every baby who's up for adoption is able to get adopted. If you end up being born with certain disabilities, it can be a lot harder because not everyone would be willing to take on the responsibility of that. That's the other thing. Say everything goes well during the pregnancy, and then the child comes out and they have different abilities that you are not equipped to take care of. It could easily be more than an 18-year commitment for certain conditions, and not everyone is able to handle that. So that's some really, really basic reasons on why I'm in this fight and why I'll always be in this fight. By the way, I should have pointed out, this is for the rally that I just got back from at my local courthouse. Find your local Planned Parenthood, your local reproductive rights group, and fight for us. I had an operation back in October. I don't remember if I've talked about it much in my videos, but I was reading recently, like, it's already really hard to get a hysterectomy or to get a tubal ligation, where they either tie the tubes or they cut the tubes out. I had my tubes removed. It's really hard to get that in general. There are forced sterilizations, particularly on people of color, but then we make it really, really hard for white women to have abortions because, well, we're white, so we're obviously, like, more important for some stupid reason. The fact that I am 28 years old and I was able to find the list of child-free doctors, and that I was able to have my operation, and that I trust that doctor and the work that she did, that is a huge privilege for me. And I wish that everyone could have that opportunity, could have those resources. Insurance covered a lot, but it didn't cover everything. I still had to pay about $5,000 or $6,000 out of pocket to have that operation. And not everyone has access to that. And when it comes to having sex or getting on birth control, like, just don't have sex and you won't get pregnant. That's not realistic. For one thing, when you're going through puberty and you have hormones and you're growing up and no one's telling you about this mysterious thing called sex, you're going to be curious about it, and things are going to happen. If you're in an abusive relationship and you get pregnant, if you have a family member who is assaulting you and you get pregnant through that, you shouldn't have to live with that experience for another 9 months, for another 18 years. No one should be forced into going through that. So I am incredibly lucky to be in the spot that I'm in. I was able to have that operation. I have a very supportive, stable relationship, and I try to offer support to everyone that I can, but there's only so much one individual person can do. So vote and fight for it. And I know, like, 2/3 of people in America do believe that what I do with my body is up to me, but unfortunately that 2/3 doesn't seem to be the people who are in control of this situation. So do what you can. If you're old enough to vote, vote. That's what we have. and use your voice. So that's going to be it for this video. Please check out The Story of Jane. It is a very good book. I highly recommend it if you want more information on the history of abortion and on the abortion service. Please note that it is a pretty graphic book. It really goes into the details of what happens during an abortion, which made me cringe a little bit because reading medical stuff kind of makes me nervous. That's one more point that I want to make, that I want to leave on. I was a very sick child. I had a lot of surgeries as a child. A lot of medical things came up. It was not pleasant. It is really hard for me to be in a hospital with someone. I was at my partner's surgery several years ago, and the nurse came in and offered me a drink and a muffin before offering that to my partner because she could see that like I looked like I was on the verge of collapse. It's very hard. It's traumatic for me to be in that environment. But in preparing for my surgery, it's like I have control over this. This is something that I want to do. I don't want kids. I want to know what my life is like without birth control, which, by the way, not everyone can handle the hormones of birth control. Birth control is not for everybody, for many reasons. But I was able to ask my doctor any questions that I had. I talked to the anesthesiologist. I was laying down on that. I went into the surgery. It was in 2021. My partner was not allowed to stay inside with me. So it's like, okay, I have to do this. I have to be on my own. So everyone who attended to me while I was on that hospital bed, I would ask them questions. I would talk to them. I would just tell them about my cats, tell them about my love of reading. They really made me feel comfortable and calm. And when the operation was over, I laid on that bed, or I sat up in that bed for another probably 15-20 minutes tops. I had some ginger ale. I ate some crackers. I felt pretty good. And that was such an empowering and awesome experience. And it's really helped me be able to move on from some of my medical trauma. And that's what I have to say on this topic. That's probably the best I can do without completely raging for hours on end. But yeah, please read The Story of Jane. It's a really awesome book. Tell me about your experiences. Go out and vote. And at the end, please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media. I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.